Today on CityCast DC, Marty Baron spent almost a decade as executive editor of the Washington Post. This gave him a close-up view of Jeff Bezos' stewardship of one of our city's most important institutions during the first Trump term. And that history is why Baron's emergence as one of the sharpest critics of Bezos' stewardship during the second Trump term has been such a big deal. In the wake of Bezos' decision to dismantle much of Baron's old paper, he's here to share his thoughts. Today is Thursday, February 19th. I'm Michael Schaefer. Here's what DC is talking about. Hi, Marty. Thank you for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So it's been a couple of weeks now since the big tumults, the gutting at the Washington Post. I'm curious how you're feeling as somebody who poured his blood, sweat, and tears into the place.
Dismayed, incredibly sad. I think it's a tragedy. The Post has been an incredibly important force in this country for democracy, for giving people the information they need and deserve to know. I think it needs to continue being that, and I'm sure they'll do a lot of great reporting. But the resources available for that are going to be sharply diminished, and I almost can't believe what's happened.
It seems to me that we in the media who've been covering this have maybe done a disservice. We keep referring to it as the layoffs, the mass layoffs, et cetera. And unfortunately, layoffs happen all the time, and it's tragic for the people involved. But it seems to me what happened here at the Post is not just mass layoffs, it's that they have fundamentally changed the nature and mission of the company. They've killed entire sectors of the coverage, and they've effectively fired certain audiences too.
Yeah, I mean, I think dismantling is it's a better word for it, although they have not completely dismantled it. But yes, they've changed. They've basically decided there are whole areas that they won't cover. The issue that I have is I don't quite understand what the mission is at this point. And neither the owner, Jeff Bezos, nor the current CEO have articulated what that mission is. When Bezos did weigh in on the appointment of the new CEO, he said that the Post had an essential mission and an extraordinary opportunity. But he didn't articulate what he saw as the mission of the Post today, and he didn't explain what he saw as the opportunity. And I think that is missing here. Where are they going? What are they going to be? Who are they? I think that's a huge, outstanding question. Look, I mean, I think that it's a mission that's captured in the motto that they have, or what actually Bezos called a mission statement. He didn't want to call it a motto; he called it a mission statement, which was "Democracy dies in darkness."
So, in your book, you talk about how it was Bezos himself who pushed for that motto, mission statement.
He did indeed. I mean, we spent 2 years on that process. It was a terribly painful process. It's hard. Believe it or not, it's really hard to come up with a motto that doesn't sound ridiculous or what have you. And ultimately, he said, "Let's go with democracy dies in darkness," which was a phrase that Bob Woodward had been using for so many years. It doesn't really go back to Watergate, but it does go back to what a judge said at one point about democracy dies behind closed doors. And so he liked that. In fact, when we began the process, he said, "Let's not be afraid of the word democracy." He's the one who said that. He's the one who said it's not a motto, it's a mission statement. And he's the one who said, it's not a product we want to sell. It's an idea that people would want to belong to. He said all that. And so I thought those were great. I was impressed to hear that. He actually stuck to that during my time there. I was grateful for that, and I would like them to stick to that mission.
You were executive editor from 2013 to 2021. That includes the very end of the period where the Graham family owned the paper and the Bezos years. How were those early Bezos years?
They were good. He came in, he had a town hall with the staff. He quite clearly talked about how he respected Katharine Graham and what she had done. He committed that if he came under pressure, he would stand up to it like Katharine Graham, in his own words. He made clear he wasn't going to be Don Graham. He wasn't going to be there and know everybody in the building and all of that. He lived in Seattle at the time. But all of our meetings with him were quite good. He clearly signaled that he was committed to the mission of the Post, that he would give us resources to innovate. He would give us what he called runway, which would be time to let our initiatives work. He did that. He met with us. He was very respectful. He was delightful company. He was entertaining, self-deprecating, and the dinners and things that we had with him. And so, I mean, he was, demanding. He clearly valued us becoming digital. He expected us to find initiatives that were going to work. He wanted us to find things that would appeal to a national and international audience. The Post up to that point, as you know, had been largely a regional publication, with its national imprint really being in the world of politics, but nothing really beyond that. And he said that we needed to become national and international, and that we had good reason to do so. It made sense strategically. We needed to go beyond what we were before. The old model didn't work. Washington is a great base for a national and international publication. The Washington Post is a name that can be leveraged to a national and international level. And by the way, he also mentioned our history and our heritage, going back to Watergate, where people understood what we stood for, that we had an identity. Even if people had not read a single word of the Washington Post over the years, they knew about the Washington Post, and it had a great brand. So all of that, of course, appealed to me. We just had to deliver results for him, and I think we did.
In the first Trump term, according to your book, he walked the walk too.
He did walk the walk. I mean, you may remember that. I mean, in 2015, during his campaign, when Trump entered the political landscape, the Post came under attack for its coverage almost immediately. And of course, Trump wasn't getting anywhere with the Washington Post, so he decided to bring pressure on the owner of the Post, Jeff Bezos. He threatened to double postal rates for the last leg of delivery of Amazon packages. Then he said triple them, then quadruple them. Obviously had no basis for saying anything. He had not done a study of any sort. He claimed that the Post was a lobbying organization for Bezos and Amazon, which was nonsense, of course. He said it was some big tax deduction for Bezos, which was nonsense too. And then toward the end of Trump's first term, I mean, Trump became really aggressive. He interfered in a $10 billion cloud computing contract that Amazon was competing for and was considered to be the leading competitor for. It did not go to Amazon on the first round. Amazon then sued and actually sought the deposition of Donald Trump while he was president, sought to have him deposed. I mean, that's extraordinary to have a company like Amazon going to court, seeking the deposition of the president of the United States. And that shows just how much conflict there was between Trump and Bezos and Amazon. And it was all for one reason, the coverage of the Washington Post. So that's what happened then. And he stood up for us. And I once told him after they lost the $10 billion contract, at some point later, I mentioned to him that the joke in the industry was that it did not just cost him $250 million to buy the Washington Post. It cost him $10,250 million to buy the Washington Post. And he just laughed. He didn't seem disturbed by it all.
So if I'm an Amazon shareholder at that point, I'm maybe saying, Jeff, what are you doing? You're messing around with this personal interest in journalism and you're costing us money. Did you ever hear him or hear of him being nervous in the face of that kind of response?
No, I didn't. Never once did he say anything. In fact, after Trump won the election in 2016, he came through the Post. It's a story that I tell in my book. He came through the Post. I asked, he actually had a series of business meetings, but I specifically asked that he meet with a lot of the people who were involved in the political coverage because they'd done a tremendous job, but they were exhausted. And he asked me what the reaction was. And I said, a bit of dismay that people weren't paying as much attention as they thought they should to what we knew about Trump's background and his personality and all of that. And so he met with us for about 45 minutes over lunch. And at the end, one of the people there said, and he praised everybody for the work they did. And they said, well, how are you? You've come under criticism. How are you processing this? And he said, don't worry about me. I can take care of myself. Just keep doing your job. And boy, I tell you, people were so thrilled to hear that they practically levitated out of that room.
So I have been going to South by Southwest in Austin, Texas every year for a minute, and it's truly one of the highlights of my whole year. I go to a ton of conferences and events, and it feels like a whirlwind of lanyards and talks, and I leave actually feeling exhausted, like, hey, I showed up but have no takeaways. South by Southwest is different because I actually leave feeling nourished and energized for new ideas. Because South by Southwest is where the world's most creative, inspired, and eclectic minds gather to shape what's next. It's the ultimate gathering for the global creative community, where thought leaders, filmmakers, musicians, and other professionals across industries share the same space. And this year, I will actually be there talking about how we can make sense of this very particular moment we're all in media and culture. Innovation, film and TV, music and culture all collide when the 2026 South by Southwest conferences and festivals take over Austin, Texas, this March 12th through March 18th. For one eclectic week, the city becomes a playground for boundary-pushing ideas, world premieres, and live performances that turn into beneficial experiences. I once went to a secret pop-up concert of Solange Knowles at South by Southwest that genuinely changed my life. At South by, you can gain access to new ideas, people, and opportunities that do not happen anywhere else. So start planning your adventure in Austin and secure your badge now at sxsw.com/DC.
So I saw this post on social media from Andy Lack, the former head of NBC News, where he talks about Bezos coming up to him at a party in like 2018 and basically giving him a hard time for what he Bezos allegedly said was NBC's too soft coverage of Trump. He was getting, sort of I'm the bigger journalist than you vibes. And I'm curious, what happened to that guy? Do you have a theory of the case? We can't really get in anyone's head, but you've been pretty close to him.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that. I hadn't heard that Andy Lack anecdote until he wrote it. It kind of surprises me. But that said, that guy is no longer around. I mean, I think I don't know where he went. Frankly, we might need some missing person posters in order to find him. So maybe that will work. But he's nowhere to be seen. I mean, the spirit that he had before is nowhere. It cannot be detected today. I certainly don't see it. And he's changed. I mean, he's just changed in a lot of ways. I mean, obviously, and it's a big disappointment. And it feels, I think that readers feel in a way, sort of the way that I do, which is the sense of betrayal.
One of the difference between your time and right now is that when you were executive editor, the Post was in a much, much, much stronger position financially. It was doing well. The revenues were increasing. Et cetera. That I assume, if you're like every other editor in history, that buys you a little bit of grace from the publisher.
Sure, but it didn't just happen magically.
Right.
It happened because we were doing really good journalism, and it happened because Bezos was investing in us, and the initiatives that we embarked upon with his investment all worked and paid off, and more than paid for themselves. And so they were spinning off black ink as opposed to the red ink that we were experiencing before that. I mean, it's important to remember that before Bezos acquired the Post was doing terribly. David Carr wrote a piece for the New York Times, basically writing it off. He said it was like a car sputtering to a stop. That's what he said. About a year later, he wrote a piece saying that we were doing amazing journalism and that we were just about as good as the Post had ever been. So it started with good journalism, but then with his investment, which we very much needed, and with his ideas and with his energy and all of that, and we were able to turn things around. I think he was a tremendous contributor to that, but we all contributed to that, and we worked together toward success. So after about 2 years of losses, we started to spin off profits, and he didn't take dividends. He doesn't need the dividends, of course. All that was reinvested in our business, and that was great. And so that's what bought us grace. It didn't just buy us grace; it bought us the opportunity to grow, which is what he wanted. When he acquired the Post, we had about 540 people in our newsroom. We were shrinking. We were probably going to shrink again. If he had not bought the Post, we probably would have gone down, 50 staffers or more in the newsroom itself. And by the time I left in February of 2021, we were budgeted for just about 1,000 people in our newsroom.
So you've come out pretty forcefully in saying that these layoffs are, in addition to the sort of the sense of vandalism and betrayal, that they are a result of lousy editorial and financial decisions by Bezos and his executives. Do any specific ones come to mind?
Well, I'm not sure I said editorial decisions, frankly. So, but I think there was a real lack of leadership. I think, the world keeps changing in media. It's changing at an accelerating pace, as you well know. Your podcast is an example of that. That's just, the kinds of things that are going on these days that didn't exist some time before. And as of about 3 years ago, hardly anybody was talking about artificial intelligence, generative artificial intelligence. And now you can't go anywhere without somebody talking about it. And it's having a huge impact on every industry, and including our own in a very dramatic way. So I think that there was no update to the vision for the Post. Obviously, we capitalized on social media before. We capitalized on search engines before. And that traffic is essentially no longer available. And what they need to focus on now is how do you fortify your relationship with your loyal readers? The problem is that the Post hasn't fortified it. In fact, that relationship is frayed. It's basically broken. It's as if the readers were you were in a marriage and you discovered that the person you married is not the person you thought he was, and then it's a totally different person, and then you have a really, really nasty breakup, a really angry one, and that's kind of what's happened here. But I also think the other big factor was, even while I was there, we had not diversified in the way, for example, that the New York Times had done. The New York Times had really diversified into, games and into cooking and into acquiring Wirecutter. Later, afterwards, it acquired The Athletic. But while I was there, the first three were the initiatives they had. And, I had asked my publisher at the time to bring Bezos in for a big strategic discussion, given what we were seeing at the New York Times. And sadly, that never occurred. And he didn't seem willing, and Bezos just didn't seem willing to make the kind of really substantial investments in diversification that the New York Times was made. All that money would have had to come from Bezos's pocket, of course, because he owns the Post 100%. There's no issuing of stock. There's no, he wasn't borrowing on with the Post as collateral, or, so at least as far as I know. And so it would have had to come from him, but he was never brought in for that discussion, and clearly he was focused on other things too.
Wait, so you're saying that there were people in the Post, including you, who thought we need to diversify. We need to be more like the New York Times Company in terms of thinking of ways of getting new audiences that maybe aren't coming for the news first. And this was met with deaf ears. Yeah,
I'm not saying we need to be more like the New York Times. I think we had to differentiate ourselves from the New York Times, but we clearly need to diversify. I don't think, I know that Bezos feels, and I agree with this, is that you can't just be a replica of the New York Times. You've got to find your own personality. And I think that was possible to do. And I think we did that in the time that I was there. We had our own personality. At one point, we had more traffic than the New York Times did. And while we didn't have as many subscriptions, we started from a much lower base. They had launched a paywall well before we launched a paywall at the Washington Post. But we were growing at an incredible pace. But we did need to diversify out of just strict news because, look, there was always the possibility that Trump would lose re-election, and his poll ratings were terrible at the time. And on top of that, once Trump was defeated in 2020, despite his claims otherwise, it was clear Biden was just more. It's just not as interesting. It was boring in comparison. And a lot of readers would feel that the threat was gone. And so much of our growth was built on coverage of politics and accountability journalism and all of that. we needed to find something else. We needed to find a way to lock people in. I mean, when Bezos acquired the Post, he said quite explicitly, I wish you would go back and read what he said. That would be helpful. So he actually said we need to recreate the bundle. So the bundle is, the idea is that newspapers were a place, you got sports, you got stock listings, you got, cooking advice, you got all these different things. Well, he was roundly mocked by supposed experts in the internet, including some at the Washington Post, by the way, who said that you can't reconstitute the bundle in the era of the internet. Well, guess what? The New York Times is reconstituting the bundle, and it found a way to do so. But Bezos didn't make an effort to reconstitute the bundle. And he said it, but he didn't follow up. And we needed to follow up. And sadly, that just didn't happen. And I think that in addition to a bunch of other things, a lot of overspending after I left, frankly, led to a real serious problem.
I'm curious about that overspending. And you left right at the beginning of the Biden administration. Biden had run on a promise of being more boring, and he delivered.
Not exactly how I put it, Michael, but okay. I get the point.
When you saw that the Post spending continued to grow, was that something you were worried about?
I was retiring, but it's like they can do whatever they want. But I was stunned. I was stunned at how much they were spending. I mean, we had an expansion plan when I left. There's no question about it. But right about that time, digital advertising was cratering. It was collapsing. And so I was stunned that they continued with that spending and then added to it. There were an enormous number of editors who were hired. They expanded several different teams there by an extraordinary amount. And they ended up with a staff that was much larger than we had even budgeted for at a time when digital advertising was collapsing, probably on the assumption that subscriptions would continue to grow. The problem is that we already saw the beginning of a plateau by the time I left, because people felt that, well, Biden would be boring, and although he didn't really promise that, but he was, and that the threat of Trump was gone. And so, you look at what's happened in streaming and entertainment. People decide, well, I can't buy all of these streaming services. I can't pay for all of them. I got to pick something. And so they had a choice. And we needed to give them a reason to say, my choice is the Washington Post, as opposed to the New York Times, or that I really want to hold on to the Washington Post in addition to the New York Times. So one of those two options. And we were not giving them enough to make the decision the way we would have liked.
Given the straitened circumstances that the Post is in now, and as I understand it, they got to break even. Bezos doesn't care if they make $1 or $1 billion, but they got to make that $1. Is there a way with this amount of constraint to recapture some piece of the glory?
Well, look, I mean, as I said, people wrote us off back in, and when I joined the Post in 2013, I mean, as David Carr, who was the late David Carr, who wrote about the Post, said that it was, as I said, a car sputtering to a stop. And people said I had no hope. The newsroom was dispirited. There was a feeling of, just incredible disappointment about how things were going. People were worried about cut after cut after cut. So, but we were able to turn it around. And, is it working as a team? I mean, from ownership to the staff to the business side, tech people, everybody working together, which is how it has to be. And so I think it's still possible. The problem is, I mean, first of all, they've just done enormous damage to the brand. And starting with Bezos' decision 11 days before the election not to run the editorial endorsement of Kamala Harris, to kill it. 250,000 subscribers reportedly left at that point. And many tens of thousands have left since, particularly with the changes on the opinion pages and the changes to the editorials themselves, which have veered toward libertarianism and more conservatism, and frankly, toward a considerable amount of dishonesty, in my view. I think that has dismayed readers. So there's been a huge amount of brand damage, a feeling that that Bezos has betrayed the values that he pledged to uphold and that he was supposed to uphold. We came up with the motto or mission statement, "Democracy dies in darkness," which really defined what our mission was, and that people could rally around. Not just people on the staff for sure, but also the general public. I can't go anywhere in the world, and I do a lot of travel these days, where people don't know that motto. That's extraordinary. That is a really powerful thing. And Bezos was very happy with the reaction afterwards, even though there were some people who mocked it as our new goth vibe and all that sort of stuff. And some of us internally had worries about using death and darkness in a motto. I mean, it's not the normal thing, right? And then I think Bezos needs to make some changes in his own personal behavior with respect to Trump so that people feel like it truly is an independent media organization as opposed to a media organization run by a wealthy but highly dependent person, dependent upon the good favors of Donald Trump. And so that is the challenge. It's a huge challenge. But I would never say it couldn't be done. I think it can be done, but whether they will do it or not is another matter.
So listen, we've been through this time now where for a while, somebody with Bezos's profile, huge amount of money, and the money did not rely on the profits of a media company, was seen as a great savior. There's still some examples of that, the ownership of The Atlantic, for instance. But I think we've learned, really rich people are great until they're not. But it leaves the question of what now? Like who's coming to save journalism if it's not going to be plutocrats?
Well, I think we have to stop thinking that somebody's going to come to save journalism. Journalism needs to save itself. That's easier said than done, I recognize. I mean, I've been in the trenches trying to do that. I do think that we need to be a sustainable business. I mean, I know that people say, oh, well, Bezos is so wealthy and he can afford all these losses and what have you. Yeah, he sure can. But the reality is that, I mean, I always told people on the staff we should want to be a sustainable business. We should want that he not treat us like a charity, because if someday he got tired of this charity, we'd be really screwed, frankly. So we should use the opportunity of his investment to find a sustainable model. That said, there's no perfect form of ownership. I haven't seen one. I've been around long enough to see them all. So what are they? Okay, well, you've already talked about the problems with rich people owning the Post. Prior to that, we had a lot of publicly traded companies that owned newspapers, and they were considered to be incredibly short-term oriented, only guided by a desire to see their stock price go up and to increase dividends. And so we did not invest nearly enough, if at all, frankly, in our future as the digital era was taking hold. So that's a reason for a lot of our problems today, frankly. I mean, I can't think of a single signature development in the digital world that came out of a traditional news organization. So, and that's stunning, given that we were supposed to be the experts in communications. So then you look at private equity and hedge funds and things like that own some news organizations around the country, particularly local ones. Well, they treat these news organizations like an annuity. They try to extract as much cash out of it as quickly as possible. They get a significant return on their investment. They sell all the real estate, whatever they can. And then they don't really care about the long-term future. Then people focus on nonprofits. They think that that's a solution. I mean, when I was at the Boston Globe in 2009, we were losing money then. And one of the people on the staff came to me and said, well, wouldn't it be better if we were a nonprofit? And I looked at him and I said, we are. That's our problem. That's not our solution. You still have to earn enough to pay the bills, right? So, and who do you get money from? Okay, so typically many of these nonprofits are turning to wealthy people who have their own interests. So you're back to the wealthy people. Or they go to foundations which have a cause that they're trying to advance, as opposed to supporting truly independent journalism. And by the way, who's on the board of a lot of the foundations? Wealthy people. So you're back to them again. And by the way, in many communities around the country, around the world, there is no philanthropic base that can support nonprofit journalism, or not enough people who would really support it. And some there will be, So I think in the Washington metro area there is, and in Boston there is, and probably in LA and some other places, San Francisco, places like that, but Chicago, but in most towns and communities around the country, where you have media outlets, there is not a large philanthropic base.
Is there anybody doing stuff either in the DC area or beyond that makes you excited that about that this may be an example of journalism saving itself?
Well, I mean, the banner of Baltimore has Stuart Bainham, who founded that, has announced that he already moved into Montgomery County. They're moving into Prince George's County. They're going to cover at least some of the Washington professional teams. So, I mean, I think they still have to get to a level of sustainability, long-term sustainability at that organization. It's not clear yet that they have. But they're trying to achieve that, and I admire that. That's been great. I think some other people have some ideas out there. I'm not really, free to talk about those. Whether they do anything or not, I don't really know. I'm hopeful, but we've got a long way to go. I think it's just really hard to replace the Washington Post. It's an incredible institution.
It was like the tip sheet for the entire rest of the Washington media.
Oh, totally, and that's true for so many. I mean, you see things on social media, influencers and the like. And what they're doing is talking about what traditional media have done. I mean, look at all the people, for example, who are focusing now on the Epstein files, including the influencers who are focusing on it. I think it's important to remember that the reason that the case of Jeffrey Epstein was resuscitated was because of a groundbreaking series in 2018 by Julie K. Brown and the Miami Herald, a traditional news organization. The Epstein thing wouldn't even be a matter of discussion if it weren't for the work that Julie and the Miami Herald did.
I take it you didn't get a Christmas card from Bezos this year.
I haven't gotten a Christmas card from him ever, actually, now that I think of it. Nor did I get an invitation to the wedding, shockingly. It's possible it was lost in the mail, or maybe he thought that I would just overshadow the other guests there. I don't know. So, and honestly, I don't care.
Marty, thank you so much for being here.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
And thanks to our newest neighbors, David A., Lola L., and Oliver S. for joining. If you also want to get a shout out, head to membership.citycast.fm. It's only $10 a month or $100 for the year. Members get ad-free listening, an exclusive events newsletter, and members-only events. Again, that's membership.citycast.fm. And that's all for today here on CityCast DC. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our morning newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye.